name is Frank Batonte. I'm a sculptor now. I retired about 9 years ago. I did a lot of work as far as sand and sketch and then carving my rock. The carving took me for different levels. Every day I didn't want to carve just a tree, so I started different things. I did inukshuks. It was always, what's the next step? And I always looked for difficulties. Working with rock when I was a kid, I was almost a stonemason. I was able to carve rocks. If we had something like a round pillar, I could create that. So that's what got me started with the stonework. Then one day, my mother-in-law had a beautiful bear sitting on her coffee table. I always wanted to find out who sculpted the bear. Luckily, my brother-in-law was really good friends with the fella, so he introduced us. And I went to his home. He walked me through all the process of how to carve with that rock. The inspiration came from the fella, Jerry, who made that bear originally. And what I taught myself was, you don't just do a bear, do it with motion. If it was a tree, bend it over. If it's a bear, put one paw in front of the other. Give it some movement. That's what inspired me to take the next step. So a lot of the sculptors today work with soapstone, and soapstone is a hardness of 1 in the Mohs scale, which is a hardness scale. I work with a harder rock, which is more into the hardness of a 3 to a 4. The sanded sketch was purely an accident, but one day while I was sanding all the scratches out, the phone rang, and it happened to be my mother. And I told her I was sanding, and she asked me to stop. So I did, and when I stopped sanding, I looked up. In my hand was an image of a fellow with a helmet on that was looking through an eyepiece, a little mound across the way. It looked like trees, and then there was a cross, so it looked like a cemetery. So I still have that original piece, which was from 2013. First, what I do is use the rock to carve a sculpture. The remnants of it, so the tail ends of it, is what I use for my sand and sketch. So after it's cut, you'll have rough marks on it. So I take a die grinder with a pad on it, which is a diamond pad, and what that does is it smoothens it out to 100 grit. And from there I use a piece of sandpaper to 320 grit, and now you have a smooth finish to it, and that's how I start the project with sand and sketch. So it's about 3 steps before you can actually use the rock to create the image. You take a piece of sandpaper, you rub the rock, and it brings up the white powder from the rock. Use that slurry, and that's my paint. The rock, of course, is my canvas. The sandpaper is my paintbrush. And that's all I did, is I was just moving my hand, and it was creating these images like a mountain, like trees, and I just followed that. I have been making probably 300 to 400 of those pieces every year. When I originally did sand and sketch, it was all black and white. I didn't understand anything about color. I had a young girl, she saw my trees and she says, "How come your tree trunks aren't brown?" I go, "I know, I'll try it." So I put a little bit of chalk pastel in there and put my trees in. She goes, "Well, I think your tree should be green." So I put a little bit of green in there, and it's people that open up the door for you to try something different. You can tell the person that loves rocks. You just see their eyes are shining towards something. And there's also people that there's metaphysical properties to a lot of rocks like I work with. And just talking to that person, they teach me something, and I teach them as well. It's amazing the stories that come out of it. If you do something difficult, it's those things that are one of a kind. When someone goes into a store and they see it, they know that nobody else has carved like that before.